Hi, everybody, it's Susan, and today I'm going to talk about the Aries solar eclipse, but actually, more precisely, the road leading us to the Aries solar eclipse. So, in today's video, I'm going to talk about the different things that are going to be happening on the way through March to get us to the end of March at the 29th of March solar eclipse. Here we have it here on Saturday, the 29th at 10:57, so almost 10:58 a.m. in Greenwich Mean Time, or what we now call Universal Time. And that you can add or subtract to, depending on whether you are in North and South America or in Europe and farther east. So, what a time that we're going through. I want to point out a number of different astrological aspects and how they're really tied into this eclipse, but more importantly, how that ties into our personal evolution. I think if you've been following me for a while, and if you haven't, welcome. If you have, welcome back. You know that I'm focused mostly on personal evolution and growth, and to overcome patterns that are really dysfunctional in our own way. Get out of our own way is one way of saying this, and we're definitely seeing this throughout this particular moment in time as we've got Chiron and Aries in square to Mars, Mars ruling those two. And I'm going to talk about that in a moment. But before I do, I want to point out how many different things are taking us towards the next step. So sometimes if we only think of one aspect of or one thing that's happening, it feels overwhelming. It feels like something huge is coming. So I don't know about you, but for example, when I was little and I would go to like the next grade up, or especially if I had to change schools, I changed schools quite a lot when I was little. Then I would always be really afraid that there would be something that would just be so huge and overwhelming that I wouldn't be able to adjust, that it would just be like this massive change, like going from primary school to middle school, for example, or middle school to high school just felt like such a huge jump. Um, and that can be what people are experiencing when they talk about, or when we talk about things that are coming up, because it feels like I'm not prepared for this. I can't cope with this. What's going to happen to me? And I get that in the comments quite a lot. I have this aspect. What's going to happen to me? And honestly, if I could tell you, I'd probably be really, really wealthy. But the truth is that your chart is speaking to you all the time. It's part of you. It's how you engage with the cosmos and with the universe. So everything is always preparing us step by step. But what we require on the way is attention. We simply have to be paying attention moment to moment, day by day, to what is going on in our experience. If we keep waiting for something to happen to us, then we're always going to have a certain threshold of anxiety. And it always feels like something is a little out of our control. And the truth is that this is part of the learning phase that we're in here, where we have to learn to choose who we are in this moment. And this is how I see this eclipse point, where we have an Aries new moon at 9 degrees of Aries and the North Node in Pisces at 27, 25 of Pisces. We'll speak about those specifically in a moment, but I just want to keep emphasizing this point. We choose in every moment, every waking moment, who we are. And that is a decision that we are either unconscious of or conscious of. And the more we become conscious of who we're choosing to be, the more empowered we feel. And that's not about becoming a fake persona. It's about understanding that we anyway aren't this persona. And when you recognize the truth of who you are, you realize, well, the way I behave is simply my way of engaging in the world. So what do I want to do? How do I want to engage as I go through this world? And that becomes who I am. And that becomes how I feel myself moving through life and how others perceive me moving through life. So this is the moment after a couple of years now, since April, I think it was the 20th of April of 2023, we started the eclipse cycle in Aries and Libra. And this is the last aspect of that. It's the finishing off of the cycle, where now we've got a bit of an overlap with Pisces, where the North Node has moved into, and the last new moon, or the last, let's say, reference to that Aries Libra axis, in this sense of the nodal axis and the eclipse cycle, is happening here at the end of March. But before we get there, there are so many things that are preparing us step by step we've already had the Venus retrograde within a degree, almost just about 2 degrees actually, of this place. So it was 10 degrees, 50 minutes of Aries that Venus retrograded on the 1st of March. And at this point in the eclipse cycle, at the end of March, we have now Venus having gone into Pisces once again. So she moved back into Pisces on the 27th, 28th of March. So really just before this eclipse. And here she is back at the place where she was in the end of January, beginning of February. So remember when there was this huge conflagration in Pisces, there was this North Node, Neptune, Venus, and even the Moon in Pisces on the 1st of February that were all conjoined within the 28th degree, or give or take a degree. But it's really intense because it's coming back. And this, we're still not finished with this. You see, it's still in the process. We're still underway. We're still moving through this process. And at the time of the Aries solar eclipse, Saturn is at the degree, roughly, where Venus herself will come back to station direct. So again, we're getting this message. It says, focus on this, focus on this, focus on this, and then this will start to evolve in this new direction. So it's like little bits, little doses of information that you need to get you to the place that you're anticipating or thinking of going forward. So Venus will station direct on the 13th of April. So we've got a long way to go. If you're watching this, I'm creating this video on the 8th of March, Women's Day, International Women's Day, speaking of Venus. And here, and she's exalted today, not in at the moment. She's still in Aries, so she's not, but maybe that's a better way of describing the state of women in the world. But nonetheless, all of this is happening also through the cycle of the Mercury retrograde, which is also pretty important at this time because we have the South Node ruled by Mercury from January 2025 through till July of 2026. Now, the other thing I want you to notice, or that I would like you to recognize or pay attention to going forward, is that this eclipse is part of a bigger lunation cycle. So there are these families of moons. And when you have a new moon, 18 months later, you're getting the full moon of this particular grouping. So 6 months later, you will also have a full moon, but it's actually part of another cycle. It'll be a different degree. So the full moon that comes up in September will also be an eclipse, but it's not part of this particular cycle, you see? So no, that's not true. The full moon that comes up in October, that'll be it. And it's no longer part of this eclipse axis. So then if we go forward 18 months, and I can just actually click on that chart. If we go forward 18 months, we're going to see that the Aries full moon of the 26th of, so now we're talking 2026, not 2025, the 26th of September, 2026, is going to be recalling this point of 3 degrees in opposition. It's a full moon opposition to the sun. It's recalling the eclipse that we're having now, or the new moon eclipse that we're having now. And also, just to point out, that it's also calling in Venus star point, which is happening just before this eclipse. So the 2025, 23rd of March, 2025, we have Venus at 2 degrees, 39 minutes. So basically in the 3rd degree of Aries with the sun. And this is the interior conjunction of Venus with the sun, and then later on there's an exterior conjunction. So the dynamic of the star point is what creates the beautiful pattern in the sky of Venus is when she meets up with the sun. And here she's meeting, and that's part of the retrograde cycle of every planet, that they have this dance with the sun. And now she's meeting up with the sun at this point where we're going to have a recall of that point, 26th of September 2026. So what I'm saying here is that all of these different points of newness, a sense of new identity, new relational quality, new values, new ideas around who am I, are all being built up at this time in a process that's going to continue for 18 months. So, of course, all of life, basically, these are little steps throughout a much vaster experience of life. But I'm just telling you, this moment is tying in to 18 months from now. And we're building to it intensively because we also have an eclipse that we've already seen. I've done another video on that on the 14th of March. I'll just quickly pull that chart up so we can see it here together. That's the Virgo eclipse. And that's where we find the sun with Saturn and the moon with the south node. So that's a south node lunar eclipse. It's a total eclipse, so really very powerful. And it's about letting go and shedding. And in fact, on the 13th of March, and I think I have a chart for that. Let me check. I made up some charts. Some of the others I just did by transit. So I don't think I actually have a chart for that. Let me just do that by day then. We're going to just knock that back 1 day. There we go. I'm not going to fiddle with the time, but just show you here. This is where we have Saturn and the Sun meeting. It's on the 13th of March. It's actually just into during the night in on the 13th of March. And that is universal time. Let's call it 6 a.m., something like that. Again, I'm not doing the exact chart, but it's just so that you understand that this is part of the bigger process of the Sun and Saturn cycle that actually is over from the 12th to the 13th overnight. And that is something that is, again, tying us into this bigger cycle of understanding what are the identity, the sense of self, the identity, the restrictions around that. In the Piscean sense, what do I believe? What do I believe are my limitations? What do I believe are my obligations? That's all Saturnian words. And then later on, we get, and I'm not sure if I did a thing for that as well, so I'm just going to go day by day. Then on the 17th of March, we get Saturn meeting up. Sorry, hang on. That's in, not true, not true. Just a minute. So, and I didn't do one for that. Let's see, is it this one? Here we go. There, it's still not that one. So I'm going to just keep moving forward day by day until we get Saturn meeting the North Node, which is also a very important transit. And as Saturn meets the North Node, this is something that is where we see here. Maybe this is a good way of explaining this. So what I'm looking at here, Saturn, where it is at the 29th of March, eclipse is going to be with Venus where she is stationing. So that's just less than a degree away. And Saturn is building up and also with Mercury. And then that is with the North Node. And all of this is building up to something new and unexpected. The North Node is always about what's unexpected. Saturn and the North Node together are a challenging aspect. That's something that is always, it's considered the most difficult conjunction in astrology, Saturn North Node. It can be serious restrictions. It's much more challenging in a natal chart than it is in a transit chart, but it can call up something that causes a challenge. By the time we've come to this, that's the 17th of April, now Venus is direct, conjoining Saturn on the North Node. And at this point, we have a new understanding. We have Neptune now into Aries since the 30th of March. And we have Mercury moving back over its retrogradation cycle. And then we have Chiron, which I'll talk about in a separate video, really getting close now to Aries, coming to the point where it retrograded last year in 2024. So we're going back and forth over the last 18 months to try and figure out where we're going now. Let me come back to the 29th. And that's this eclipse that I'm starting to elaborate on here, which is all about an opportunity to see ourselves differently and engage differently in this world, in the context of a world that's changing. And as we go through this March and into April, we're going to have a lot of impulses for massive, massive change. Just the cycles of retrogradation alone only Venus or only Mercury will always provoke some kind of internalization or inquiry around these things. But we're combining that now with eclipses, as well as with the Mars retrogradation cycle, which ended on the 24th of February, but is still in the same sign in Cancer, and which is ruling this eclipse and squaring Chiron at the same time. I'll get to that in a minute. And all of this is churning inside. So if you're feeling anxious, by the way, that anxiety is part of the signature of the North Node Saturn. If you're feeling anxious, it's because you're not slowing yourself down to come to the present moment awareness. Don't try to plan yourself forward too much, and don't anticipate things happening to you, but rather see what can I engage with in this moment. And the more that you can do that, the more you're going to feel that every single moment has its logic and its meaning. Here we have Saturn at the solar eclipse in a lovely sextile to Uranus. It's a separating sextile. So we see this energy of support for something changing, and that has been ongoing with Uranus going through the 11th house, going through the sign of Taurus. And then that sense of sextile is about willing to change, willing to go forward into the next thing. And it's really based on what we value. It's based on what material comforts or other things we're ready to change, because it's not going to be possible to maintain, in some cases, our standard of living or our quality of life in the way that it used to be. So we're making an adjustment to who are we now, and what do we need to go forward into this way of being. And that can include recognizing that there are certain ways of living that we're no longer able to maintain or sustain, both for collective reasons and also for individual reasons. So this is about building resilience, and it's about being flexible. So the Saturn in a sextile to Uranus is a great signature of flexibility. It's saying I have stability, but at the same time I'm willing to change. And so the sense of the let's say, the tension between Uranus wanting things to be different and Saturn wanting things to be stable and wanting things to be predictable is not so big there, because there's a feeling of willingness to change with the sextiles and trines. And that's supported by the trine from Mars to Saturn as well, which feels like I've got this, I'm going to go forward, I'm going to move in a new direction. And the square that we have from Mars to Chiron is also calling back something that's been going on for some time already, since February. We already had that square last October as Mars was moving direct, and then we got it again in January as Mars was retrograding. But this is the final square now between the Chiron in Aries and Mars in Cancer. And this is a point where we understand where we need to take action based on something that makes us feel secure, emotionally secure, by overcoming a sense of self that is limiting. Chiron in Aries has a sense of something's wrong with me. I'm not good enough. I'm not dot, dot, dot enough. There's been, in this case, an energy around self-esteem or childhood wounding that we have been able to work through and uncover. And probably in some cases, it's been a very deliberate process where I really need to get down and understand this thing. And for others, it may have been a process that just felt like an awakening to something, an awakening to who I am, without the baggage, without the extras, without the opinions of parents or teachers or other authority figures that I've carried with me. So this is the moment. It's an adjustment to a new way of acting. Mars is about action. It's about choice. It's about what do I want out of my life, and that sense of the passion towards something else. And here the Mars in Cancer wants to have emotional and psychological security, and wants to have a sense of dynamism in terms of the emotional impact or the emotional, let's say, truth that somebody might be holding. We'll talk about Chiron and Eris in conjunction. That's for May, so it's a long way off, but I will come back with a video about that because it's an era-defining conjunction that I think is a bigger part of what we're grappling with, but not to overload too much of what's going on at this point. I just want to keep the emphasis here on where we're growing through March and how significant this is. So let's step back again, and we're going to look at a couple of other charts here. So how do we do this? There's so many things here. Let's take it chronologically. So we saw the lunar eclipse that we've already done. I've already done a video on that 14th of March lunar eclipse, which is part of that deal. Then we have Mercury, which is retrograding on the 15th of March. Then we have the Sun conjoining Mercury, and that's happening on the 24th of March. All right, so we've got Venus in her retrograde pattern, having just met the Sun. Now it's Mercury that's meeting the Sun in its retrograde pattern before it moves back with Venus into Pisces. So there's a lot of thinking, a lot of reconsideration, a lot of redefinition, because Mercury is all of those things. It's about how do I want to see myself? Now, Mercury in Aries can be extremely impulsive. It can be very direct, blunt. It can be jumping and reaching conclusions before we've really researched things. But when Mercury is retrograding from Aries, we have to do the research. We have to at least challenge our thinking, challenge our assumptions, challenge our self, our notion of self. And this is part of the Venus dynamic as well in Aries. So we're getting closer and closer to the eclipse energy as we go forward. And at the same time that the Sun is coming together with Mercury in its interior conjunction, we also have the Moon with Pluto, and Moon with Pluto is fantastic for understanding the deeper psychological meaning of things, the deeper significance, and that's in a sextile to this. So the Moon Pluto is sextiling the Venus, Mercury, and Sun at this time around the 24th of March. And again, it's giving us a few days to really process some things, to really process and understand things in a much better way. We still have the trine from Mars to Saturn, from Mars in Cancer to Saturn in Pisces, and we still have this building sextile between Saturn and Uranus. So there's still this support that's there. There's still this determination. There's an acknowledgement that something needs to change with these energies that are quite constructive. They're very, very healing energies. And although Jupiter is the ruler of all of the dynamics in Pisces, and it also rules Sagittarius, but at the moment there's nothing in Sagittarius that we need to focus on for this process. We have a Jupiter that's moving direct and starting to pick up some speed now before the eclipse time. So it's not making any specific aspects, but that might be just as well, because Jupiter in Gemini can add to a feeling of too much consideration, too many ideas, too much information. And really, we have to be very personal at this time. What is going on with me? How am I impacting my environment? How am I impacting my own life, the quality of my life? And just for this moment, really start to dig deep. Here we've got the Moon and Pluto. So here that's the 24th of March. The Sun is conjunct Mercury as it's retrograding. And then we continue into the journey of the eclipse as I go into, where's the eclipse again? There we go. We'll go into, oh, did we do the star point? Yeah, I think we did the star point. So that was the 23rd. So that 23rd is the Venus star point. Mercury conjoins the Sun the next day. And that is still in a conjunction, oh, sorry, in a sextile. I think I need coffee. That's still a sextile from Pluto to Venus Sun, or from Venus Sun to back to Pluto. So those are all part of the week before the eclipse journey. Now we come back to the eclipse here, and we'll just have a look at that once again. So the message here that I want to leave you with is that there's something really big happening that has to do with how we perceive ourselves. And it's part of this 2-year journey that we've already had. So it's not new information, it's a realization and a need to take action, because here we've got this Mars. It's not a very frequent trine. Mars trining Saturn is, it's pretty rare. You'll get that usually once every year and a half or 2 years, depending on the retrograde cycle. So that's a relatively rare thing to be happening also at the same time as we're having an eclipse. And that's also being ruled, in this case, by Mars. So a significant pattern, a significant moment in time. Um, and then the other aspect of this is that on the 19th of March, and I won't pull up a chart for that, we will have already had Sun in conjunction with Neptune. And then, and that is also about where just before the Sun reaches Venus and Mercury at that point on the 19th, we had to perhaps visualize something, or we had to have a new vision for ourselves. The sun represents consciousness. It's ourself in terms of our awareness of self. This is me, whether I'm in diapers or whether I'm at high school or whether I'm getting married or whether I'm having a baby or whether I'm approaching my 60s or whatever. This is the self that I am, that I sense myself to be, not the persona, not the individual foibles and the personality traits, but the sun is me, how I show up in the world, my purpose in the world, my sense of engaging in the world. It's extremely significant in our conscious, in our awareness of self, and it's reflected in the moon during a full moon. The sun is reflecting the light from the earth back to the moon, back to the earth. And that is the notion of the mind or the memory or the individuated self, which is the moon. And now we have the merging of the moon and the sun. When we have a new moon, it's always that, but here it's emphasized because it's significant on that point where we've had Mercury, where we've had Venus, and now again at this point, this new moon in Aries, all about this sense of self. We're merging the consciousness with our identification with self, with our mind, with our attitudes, with our emotions. All of those things are merging after having gone through this really elongated process throughout March, from the moment that Venus approached this 9-degree point to the moment that she retrograded less than 2 degrees away from that point on the 1st of March. We're really looking at all of those senses of me engaging with my life. Who am I? How do I engage with my life? Where do I stop myself? This is also how I see Chiron. It's a kind of a self-sabotage. Where do I hold myself back? Where do I hold on to those old ideas told to me by others of how somehow flawed I am, or holding on to events that have happened to me in the past and identifying with that? All of our suffering comes from over-identification with the self, meaning the little s self. The consciousness that we are, the capital S self that we are, is untouchable. We are unblemished. There's a sense of awareness that's just pure. And if we can be aware of a thought, if we can be aware of an emotion or a memory, that's not who we are, you see? So that means that if we're still holding on to those things and saying, this is who I am, that event happened to me and that's who I am because of that, then we're not able to fully function in this moment. There's always a part of us. This is the baggage we're kind of hauling along. We've just had on the 14th of March, or as I speak, it's a week away, we're getting this eclipse, which is a South Node lunar eclipse in Virgo. I'll pull that up again. That South Node lunar eclipse there in Virgo, 24 degrees nearly with the South Node, and the Sun with Saturn is saying, just, could you just drop it? Can you let that go? Can you shed something about what is holding you back in terms of anxiety, in terms of the way you identify with yourself, or in terms of things that are keeping you ill? And come to this new place, which is where we get the new moon. It's like the refresher after this shedding. We have a north node, meaning something new is coming in, north node eclipse, with Venus on the north node having come back from her journey to the same point where we have the lunation. And Saturn is holding within less than a degree the point at which Venus will return to and then come back directly, and only on the 16th of May recross this point where she stationed it, well, a little bit further on, 10 degrees 50 of Aries. All of this to say, this is a moment to really introspect. It's a good time to really question big life questions. How do I fit into my life? How do I fit into my neighborhood? How do I fit into society? Where do I want to be? The movement back and forth with Neptune. We've already had Venus, we've had Mercury, we've had the Sun, and then the North Node already came in touch with Neptune in January, in February. It's still within a very close degree orb of that. It's 2.5 degrees of orb of conjunction and a little bit less. And then Saturn comes up with Neptune. And as all of these planets go back and forth over Neptune, it's like, what can we envisage? What can we visualize going forward into a new frame of reality, into a new way of living? and coming as close to personal as possible, this journey will be easier. Aries is all about me, how I show up. Look, it's like me showing up in the world. It's my identity, it's my engagement, my sense of self. That doesn't have to be problematic if, especially if we're in our conscious awareness of our way of engaging with the dynamics around us, with the community around us, with our life in every day. What is my attitude? What am I choosing every morning when I wake up and get out of bed? And this movement towards the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, when you keep that uppermost in your mind, how is my energy influencing my relationships, my relationship to my body, my relationship to others, my relationship to my work, to my worth, to my job, to my whatever, to my participation in society, how all of those things are happening. We're being told and shown every step along the way in the month of March. We always are, but this is intensification of the process. Pisces is about the letting go and moving into this new way of framing the collective. So Pisces represents this sense of the absolute, the unity of everyone, the unity of consciousness, the unity of all living things. And Aries is about the new start. It's about something that is individuating or coming forward in a novel way. It's pioneering. It's energy that's very stimulating and inspiring. So where can you find that in yourself? Where can you inspire yourself to live fresh in this moment, to really move through this moment and live in a new way? And I will come back with another video and talk about how that's showing up in everybody's different charts for the different sun, moon, and ascendant signs. And in the meantime, start to notice where you yourself are your own worst enemy. This is the movement here with Chiron. The next thing that the moon will be aspecting will be a conjunction to Chiron and a square to Mars. So an understanding of healing, an understanding of overcoming, and then how am I going to do something about that is going to be the question. And that's within the same day. That's by the time Neptune moves in to Aries. We're on the precipice of something. There's this shift that's happening. And a day after this eclipse, on the 30th, with less than a day after this eclipse, we've got Neptune moving in to change places with Mercury. Mercury moving into Pisces first, then Neptune moving into Aries. And it's all about saying, where am I coming from and where do I want to go with this? So I'm going to leave it there. I just wanted to come in with this idea, with this notion of what is coming forward in the month of March. It's such a huge month and it's an opportunity. It's an absolute opportunity. The North Node in Pisces for me, especially when it crosses Saturn, is an opportunity to realize that life in this human form is finite, that we only ever have this moment because we don't know what's coming next. So when I'm talking about these things in terms of letting go of baggage, let go of victim identification, let go of all of this stuff that is holding you in a pattern of stuckness, that's holding you in a pattern of resentment, that holds you away from relationship, it's coming from experience. So I just turned 59, but when I was 35, I nearly died. And I was going to leave behind a 2-year-old and a 7-week-old baby. And that awakening, that notion of this moment is so vulnerable. This moment in time, the moment we die is unknown to us. And this is why the Buddha taught that we have to live every moment as if it's our last. And this is very much for me what this Aries solar eclipse represents. It's literally that teaching, the awareness of consciousness, the awareness of life itself being a continuity beyond the human form as a part of a bigger whole, a little puzzle piece in a complex cosmic web, and the awareness that I am, this is me showing up in this lifetime, and how fragile that notion of self is. So let's, like a good Aries, be engaged, be jumping into something that feels fresh and youthful and pioneering and inspired, and not get bogged down in things that are coming from the past. This is about something new And it's a new way of identifying with oneself, not over identifying. Don't worry about your labels, whether you're him, her, whatever the thing is. Drop it all, at least for a moment. Just for a moment, just recognize I am. And letting go of all of that stuff around the persona and the identification with the small self, with the persona, with the neediness that needs to be seen. That this is an opportunity to switch that up and change that. And I promise you, you will be more engaging, more powerful, more connected with the world around you when you do that. The ego says, no, 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 I have to have all these identities. I have to have all of this notion of who I am, and people have to tell me who I am by mirroring that back to me all the time. But the truth is, when you let go of all of that and you're almost semi-anonymous in life, you are the richest person walking this earth. You feel absolutely at ease, and every single moment you're recreating yourself. So good luck with this. I'll come back in another video.